Adam the Apostate has a really interesting post on X. He asked former Muslims to share why they left Islam. I want to read some of the responses for three reasons. One, it's good to understand the kinds of things that bother Muslims about Islam and that ultimately convince them to leave the religion. Two, we should all be supporting the ex-Muslims who are responding. Whether you agree with their reasons or not, whether you agree with where they ended up or not, keep in mind, these are people who are under a death sentence because they refuse to mindlessly obey the ramblings of an illiterate 7th century Arabian caravan robber. Very frequently, their families turn their backs on them. If a woman is married and has kids and decides to leave Islam, she's probably got a battle ahead of her because her husband's family is going to try to keep the kids from her. There's always a huge cost for leaving Islam, and Muslim leaders want it to stay that way because that's how they keep people from leaving Islam. Three, as new alliances are forming, as, for instance, Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens fans become increasingly pro-Islam, it's going to become more popular for non-Muslims to condemn and mock ex-Muslims. Look at what Milo just said on X. When a man leaves Islam, it is normally because he is a homosexual choosing dunya over deen. That's choosing the world over the faith. When a woman does it, it is because she craves the life of a prostitute, and because she has just been tipped off that her OnlyFans has made it into the hands of her uncles. You'll be seeing more of this as people who want attention, like Milo, realize that there's a really easy way to get attention. Just say something stupid and insane that Muslims agree with, instant clicks. So, weird times, but we've got Adam the Apostate. He's an ex-Muslim and an Oxford theology graduate who posted, "Ex-Muslims, please comment below the reasons why you left Islam to help spread awareness for the liberals who have no idea what it is like for people like us, if it is safe and able for you to do so. Thank you to all those on the X community who stand with and support us." And here are some of the responses. Nuria, "I read the Quran in English and was disgusted at the word of God. Turned to the Hadith and Sunnah and was even more disgusted when I discovered the so-called Prophet's life, his wives, his morals, and his appetite for war, plunder, and grape, which basically make up the religion." Anna, "I left Islam because my ex-husband used Islam to justify domestic abuse. Local imams agreed. His family agreed. Police got me and my kids to safety. I thought I'd study more Quran because they must have been wrong. My story is pinned on my profile." Indeed, they must have been wrong. There's no way the Quran says, oh wait, here it is in Surah 4, verse 34. "Men are in charge of women, because Allah hath made the one of them to excel the other, and because they spend of their property for the support of women. So good women are the obedient, guarding in secret that which Allah hath guarded. As for those from whom ye fear rebellion, admonish them and banish them to beds apart and scourge them. Then, if they obey you, seek not a way against them. Lo, Allah is ever high, exalted, great." Brunote, "I left Islam around 18 and am now 49 and Christian for the past 2 years. I was an atheist in between. Why I left is not as important as what I know to be true now. In my experience, Islam is not based in love or presence of God or the light. Music is forbidden. People do not carry warmth and grace and what I now know as real kindness. There is a scary, edgy, robotic obedience that, in contrast to what I know now, is absolutely not of a divine creator. When your needs are challenged by someone who thinks like this, you do not matter. That is a big problem. I have a longer post explaining my life story pinned to my profile, and I am happy to answer anyone's questions. On the blockchain, the inequality of the sexes, the general tribal mindset of hating non-Muslims, it's so normalized to demonize non-Muslims that many Muslims don't know the rest of the world isn't like that, or at least the West strives to be better than that mindset. Muhammad's character, for obvious reasons. The support for enslaving non-Muslims. There are so many, but this was the reason I left Islam. Bosh, I left Islam in my mid-teens because of the fundamental dishonesty of all of the Muslims around me. They lied in big ways and small, as if the truth didn't matter at all. Ex-Muslim Sheikh, I left Islam because I got tired of pretending that a book advocating wife-beating, slavery, and killing apostates is holy and peaceful. Madiha, I left because I read Quran, found human rights and especially women's rights issues. 1. Zero proof that it's true religion. 2. Morals. As gay men, I would never be part of religion that thinks I should be killed for being gay. 3. Women's rights. A religion that treats women as slaves and says it's okay to grape her doesn't deserve to be followed. In Islam's defense on the gay issue, there was the night of Al-Zut. I left because the Quran confirms marriage with minors and scientific mistakes and moral problems. Scientific mistakes? You think the sun setting in a muddy pool, and stars being missiles that Allah uses to shoot demons, and semen forming between the backbone and the ribs are scientific mistakes? Maybe science just hasn't caught up to the Quran yet. I left when I found that it is okay to marry minors according to Islam. Impossible. Let's refute this right now. Sahih al-Bukhari, 5133. What's the chapter heading? Giving one's young children in marriage is permissible. Why? By virtue of the statement of Allah. And for those who have no monthly courses, i.e. they are still immature, Surah 65, verse 4 of the Quran, which allows marriage to prepubescent girls. And the iddah is the waiting period for a woman or a girl after her husband divorces her. She has to wait a certain amount of time before she can marry another man. And the iddah for the girl before puberty is 3 months in the above verse. So if a man divorces a prepubescent girl, how long does the prepubescent girl have to wait before the next guy marries her? 3 months. And to illustrate Allah's ruling about marriage to prepubescent girls in the Quran, Bukhari quotes Aisha saying that Muhammad had sex with her when she was only 9 years old. Narrated Aisha that the Prophet wrote the marriage contract with her when she was 6 years old, and he consummated his marriage when she was 9 years old, and then she remained with him for 9 years, i.e. till his death. Wow, these ex-Muslims are right. I was never a true Muslim. I was forced to learn and pray in Turkey. While being forced to learn and pray, I learned that it is all about death and destruction. It is a cult worshipping death. True. Total death cult. I am ex-Muslim because I believe Islam is a cheap copying of the other religions, just more harsh, fake, and brutal. You should live with them to see the degree of barbarism. I left because my ex-husband used the religion to imprison me. I decided one day to step outside of Islam and look in, rather than staying within the fold of Islam and looking out, as I had been wont to do for about 4 decades. It was difficult, but I had to do it. I realized I had been blind. I started to research and hear what non-Muslim scholars also had to say, those who were more willing to ask the tough questions. I eventually came to the realization that Islam is Arab propaganda. I had systematically dismantled my own identity. It was painful, to be honest, but I feel free after leaving Islam and religion in general. The irony in all this is that my belief in God has never been stronger. The only difference is that I've turned my back on the Arab God. When I was a young kid, I realized how evil Islam is based on the ideas I always saw. None of it made sense to me as a child. I would try to tell people how bad it is, and they would attack me. 30 years later, the same Islam slaughtered our people in Iran. Now everyone understands. I was one of those liberals that converted, and let me tell you, 12 years later, I escaped with my children. Islam is like the mob. It's not designed for leaving, especially for women. Because I am considered half a man in Islam, because I have a male legal guardian who decides whether I can get a job, a passport, or even an education, because I was forced into hijab at age 6, because I was told over and over again I am responsible for the honor of the family, because I was sexually assaulted at age 11, but I was told I was responsible for all men's sexual desires, because I inherit half my brother, because my witness in court is half, because my father, brother, uncle, grandfather, any man in the family could kill me to restore the honor of the family if they feared my rebellion and dishonoring the family name and would never be punished. Because I am worth half a man if I get killed. Because I was told my whole life I was going to burn in hell for my hair showing and my improper hijab. Because I knew if my husband wanted to have a second or third or fourth wife, I could not object. Because he could divorce me whenever he pleased and take my children if I ever gave birth. Because he could beat me black and blue and I still couldn't get a divorce. Because I was tired of not being human enough for Islam to be afforded dignity and safety and autonomy. Hashtag Islamotrauma. Grew up in Iran, all they told us was to hate. Death was the only guaranteed way to heaven. As an Indian Muslim, Allah's hatred for polytheists and his shirk obsession made zero sense. I left because of violence in Islam and life of Prophet Muhammad. I left Islam because concept of God seemed illogical to me. I left Islam about 1.5 years ago. The Sufism my father taught me was a good moral code and guide through my life, but I look around and see so few people taking the Quran seriously and claiming to follow the faith. I can see a dangerous rot spreading in the UK. It violates core principles of the Quran and is very dangerous to the culture. Kind of odd. He left Islam, but thinks the problem is people who aren't following the Quran properly. Goofy Sufis. I left Islam because it is a religion of murderers and pedos. I had some questions about status of women, and at the time I realized I was always in denial about true status of non-Muslims in Islam. I couldn't find any satisfactory answers, so I started rereading Quran and Hadiths. That was that. I left Islam because I am a Persian woman. I think this should explain everything. I left because it's a toxic ideology that stands against girls and women, freedom, critical thinking, personal choice, and overall human rights. I'm a child marriage survivor because of Islam. Many won't want to hear it, but it's my lived truth. You're free to speak yours, and I'm free to speak mine. I left Islam in 2016 because there are 20 different Arabic Qurans with thousands of contradictory variants. Come on, there's only one Quran. If you think there are more, let's see them.
Now hold these up, and what do we now know about these Qurans?
Nothing.
Amjad says there's nothing. Now Amjad, do all these Qurans agree with each other?
No.
Are there two Qurans that agree with each other?
No.
I apologize. You were right. I was wrong. There are tons of different Qurans. I left Islam after reading Quran and Hadith with meaning. I was Muslim for 40 years. For me, it was the rise of normalized hatred after October 7th. Watching the manipulations and lies gather support was disgraceful. The internet played a big part in me finally seeing Islam for what it truly is also. Was born and raised Muslim. Because very disillusioned with the behavior and hypocrisy of other Muslims excusing their sin, met a Christian who discussed his and my faith. Came away realizing Islam is demonstrably false, dark, and unfortunately evil. Became a Christian months later. Because of the war bounties and concubines, when I read it for the first time, I was astonished that how come it's even morally justified. Ex-Muslim from Maldives here, Islam is forced on all the citizens of Maldives and nobody is allowed to criticize it. Phase 3 of Islam. I left Islam after reading the Quran and Hadiths multiple times because it's illogical, immoral, and violent. I left Islam once I read the Quran. I was born in a Muslim family. As a woman, it didn't make sense. It still doesn't make sense. Moreover, their God is really sadistic, keeping track of how much you pray in order to reward you in afterlife. And Canadian ex-Muslim says, read my bio. Okay, we will. Allah allows sex slavery, child marriage, and wife beating. He commands Muslims to hate Christians and Jews and kill non-Muslims. That's why I left Islam. I'd say these ex-Muslims have a point. Islam is indeed a huge, steaming pile of demonic nonsense. And that's why it has to threaten people with death and all sorts of other punishments to keep them from leaving. It's also why we need to support the ex-Muslim community. One of Islam's most powerful weapons is the fear of losing family and friends, the fear of being a disappointment to parents, the fear of being ostracized and having nowhere to go. There has to be a strong ex-Muslim community so that people who want to leave Islam can know that even if their family abandons them, they've got another family ready to help. This idea has been part of Christianity from the beginning because people in the first century often had to give up a lot to follow Christ. So, Jesus said, "Truly I say to you, there is no one who has left house or brothers or sisters or mother or father or children or lands for my sake and for the gospel, who will not receive 100-fold now in this time, houses and brothers and sisters and mothers and children and lands, with persecutions, and in the age to come, eternal life. But many who are first will be last, and the last first." What does he mean when he says that if you give up house or brothers or sisters or mother or father or children or lands for his sake, you'll get much more now in this time? Well, you may lose your family, but you're becoming part of a much bigger family, and your new family will take care of you. I put the link to Adam the Apostate's post in the description. I would encourage you to like and share some of the responses and to follow some of the ex-Muslims there. We want the ex-Muslim community to grow because the bigger and stronger that community gets, the safer it will be for Muslims to stop believing in the most obvious false prophet in history.